No, it's just a hoodie. I'm not dressed as Green Arrow or anything. Hello everyone, I'm Kevin, always known as Forum BX257, here to bring you another 1980s and 90s G.I. Joe toy review. And for Halloween 2018, I'm going to be taking a look at the Cobra Ninjas, the 1990 Night Creepers. Night Creepers make their first comic book appearance in the Old Mobile comic run of G.I. Joe, issue number 107, and make their first cartoon appearance in the Geek animated television series episode titled Revenge of the Pharaohs. Now, one very interesting thing about this figure is that there is an established leader for them in both the cartoons and the comic books. And in the cartoon, he actually just had an open mask, but otherwise they looked exactly the same. So you actually have a unique opportunity if you have this action figure to either treat him as the individual Night Creeper leader or just as a generic ninja. Taking a look at the Night Creeper's accessories first, he comes with a rather large, aggressive-looking crossbow. Next, he comes with two swords, only one of which can fit onto his backpack. Very strange that both of them have a very Middle Eastern kind of a look to them, rather than the typical Oriental look that most weapons ninjas are given. First, we'll take a look at the one that can't fit into his backpack, the Barbed Sword. You notice that the handle is really very short. I couldn't find a historic account of a barbed sword, but plenty of examples of barbed spears. I'll assume they have the same benefit. After being thrust into an opponent, the rear-facing barbs make it difficult to extract. However, it's a one-shot weapon when used in this manner, as it can't be recovered, and I'll bet it can get caught on objects in the user's surroundings easily. Next, we'll take a look at his serpentine blade. Just pull that out from the pegs. And again, it has a very short handle. While wavy, crisp blades are typically associated with daggers, there are sword versions. Ignoring the cultural context of the serpentine blade for a moment, it does have a practical form. The wound width, when thrust into an opponent, is twice that of a straight blade. It has the benefit of being lighter than a sword with the same length made with a wider blade. Just to give you some context as to what I mean by a very short handle, the bottom sword is the 1984 Storm Shadow sword. So you can really see that the 1990 Night Creeper's weapons are actually very short when it comes to the gripping point. If there's one negative thing I have to say about the Night Creeper is his accessories. Well, both the swords are kind of fantasy looking, but actually do have real practical applications. The fact of the matter is that the small handles actually make it fairly hard for him to fit into his hands. As you can see, my hands are a little bit open on one side and less so on the other. So it's really hard just to have him hold on to these things. And finally, he comes with a backpack. This backpack was a reuse of the mold of the 1989 Snake Eyes backpack. According to their file card, Night Creepers are supposed to be high-tech ninjas, but they seem to come with just the traditional melee weapons that ninjas generally carry, no matter their design. So one thing that I do is I kind of display this guy without those accessories and actually give him my 1989 DJ rifle, seeing as I don't really display my DJ figure with this rifle. And I think the color actually goes very well with the purples and maroons of this particular design. So now he has both traditional and high-tech with him. I've even discovered that the rifle can actually just fit onto the outside of the rungs and holds in fairly well. That's a very interesting coincidence there. I know a lot of collectors really don't like the overall color scheme of purple and maroon, but you have to understand it was 1990 and quite a lot of the Cobra figures actually had that color scheme. One thing that I always thought was really kind of strange about the design when I first saw the figure and I wasn't aware of how it was designed was how the upper half of his body is that maroon, and then just the rest of his arms just seem to be purple, almost as if the bottom portion of his arms are discolored or something. But then that's when I took a look at the artwork for the figure, and I could see what they were trying to go for. He's actually wearing some type of a t-shirt, but with a long sleeve shirt underneath that. Basically, he's wearing a fooler. So that's what they were trying to go for here. It's just that the sculpt between the top of his arm and the bottom, it doesn't really give you the impression of like a flowing sleeve being cut off here. It just looks like one long thing, which is just kind of rather discolored. One design in particular I really like is the way they did his head. It's a very interesting blend of traditional and futuristic, with the futuristic kind of almost Cyclops-like glasses over his eyes. And of course the silver on top of his head, denoting that he is actually wearing a helmet underneath all this flowing material. And of course he just has his traditional over the nose and mouth ninja mask. It's actually kind of a shame that they didn't go with actual cloth material for him. Kind of like the way the 1992, I think, Nunchuck from Ninja Force had that. I think that's a very good look. And like I said in my look at that figure in my top 10 1990 figures, it actually does give him a sort of a Bedouin, Middle Eastern kind of a look. And of course you have these large plates on the front here. It's very far from the traditional kind of soft armor that we're starting to see in G.I. Joes being incorporated into their design around 1990. So it's kind of interesting to see like these armor, like clearly armored pads on the front of this guy's chest. But again, I mean, he's already wearing kind of like a helmet or something on him, so he has a lot of protection on the upper part of his body. And then of course he has some type of camouflage down here, purple and gray camouflage. I am definitely happy that they didn't cheap out and not paint the back of this figure, because a lot of 1988 and 1989 G.I. Joes seem to have skipped paint apps, particularly on their chests. So it's nice to see that all of the detail is actually picked out in paint here. According to both the comics and the cartoons, the Night Creepers actually take over from Storm Shadow. While Storm Shadow was an individual and not a whole group of ninjas, they were contract ninjas specifically for Cobra. And while the file card does kind of suggest that they are their own unit, so just who is the Night Creeper supposed to be fighting against? Well, in 1990, that specific year, we don't have any other ninjas. But in the previous year, we do have Snake Eyes himself. Of course, in the comic books, the Night Creepers are actually contracted to kill Snake Eyes. And this is the version of Snake Eyes where you do see them fighting against each other. However, I would actually argue that there is actually a better rival in the 1988 Storm Shadow, who is now a good guy at this point. And yes, in the comic books they actually did fight, but it was Storm Shadow coming to Snake Eyes' aid at that point. However, what I mean by that is this version of Snake Eyes comes with a compound bow, certainly equal to the crossbow that the Night Creeper comes with. And the Night Creeper actually comes with two edged weapons, just like Storm Shadow comes with a sword and those claws. Despite collector concerns over the use of purple and maroon for ninjas, I actually see it as a very good thing, because it's colorful enough to attract kids upon first viewing anyway, but those particular colors are actually subdued enough that they actually work with a lot of grays and blacks, just as they do with the Night Creepers. And as you can see here, they don't look like they're popping out any more than Snake Eyes clad in all black, or Storm Shadow, who is all in white. In the UK and Europe, the Night Creeper, like a lot of figures based on the 1990 series, were re-released the following year with spring-loaded weapons in order to catch up with the gimmick-laden North American release trends. The Night Creeper got a uniquely colored 1991 Mercer rocket launcher and missile. In some parts of Europe, it was frowned upon to have depictions of guns on media aimed at children, and that included toy packaging. They never removed the actual weapon for the toy, although oddly enough, Steel Brigade figures were an exception. The The Night Creeper was one of the figures included in a series of bargain-priced 3-packs exclusively sold at Woolworths in the UK. The sets collected random 1989 and 1990 figures. If you're looking for a Night Creeper on the aftermarket, he's actually fairly easy to find and fairly cheap. And while a lot of people do army build this guy, like I said, there's so many of them and he's fairly easy to find, absolutely complete, that his price has actually remained quite low. Of course, there are other rivals to army building ninjas, such as the mail-away Ninja Viper, which is quite a bit harder to find, obviously. And there is really only one thing to look out for if you're looking for one on the aftermarket, and that is the middle peg on his backpack. Unfortunately, it's often found broken off. As a matter of fact, just by repeatedly putting my wavy sword in there, it's actually strained just that middle peg. Now, as I said before, the backpack was originally the Snake Eyes backpack from 1989, and as you can see, it's really only meant for a straight sword and not something which is curved like this, giving quite a bit of odd stress to the peg, and unfortunately that one peg is really where this thing has its breaking point. Here to bring you another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. Easy to find in quite bit. Well, that's all the time I have right now. Please check out my Facebook page for more information and behind the scenes photos for these reviews. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for next time to see another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. See you then.